Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joining me this afternoon is Danielle. She's from Independent Living and a very familiar guest here at the show. Glad to have you back. And today we're going to be talking about tips to make a home dementia friendly. Kind of become a really big discussion point here of I don't want to say mental health, but Alzheimer's, dementia, and I think it's Awareness Month coming up here in June. Kind of perfect timing, if you will.
Right. That's why we did it. So yeah, June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. So we're going to talk about some tips that are focused for folks that are affected by that, but also I've just encouraged people to get pen and paper and jot down these tips because really they're useful for all.
Yeah, these will be some good tips for people who don't know Independent Living. Talk a little bit about the great organization.
Sure. So Independent Living is a local nonprofit that has served older adults and adults with disabilities in Dane County since 1973. We have a variety of services that support people in their homes as well as some residential communities. And then I manage the home modifications department. So we're made up of some occupational therapy assistants that assess homes and make recommendations for aging in place, fall prevention, and just improving people's kind of daily lives there. And we have on-staff carpenter as well. So someone on staff will do the installations and we can make custom solutions as well. So really we're a one-stop shop.
Yeah, the customization part of your department is fantastic, which makes the difference of keeping you independent in the home. Let's go right into what is Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, so Alzheimer's disease is a degenerative disease. Alzheimer's and dementia are similar but not the same. Dementia encompasses multiple types of memory issues, and Alzheimer's is the most prevalent. 70% of dementia cases are Alzheimer's cases, and then there are other types as well. 50 million people have Alzheimer's disease in the world, and in Wisconsin, it's right now about 110,000. And the projections by 2040, it'll be 242,000 Wisconsinites that will be affected. So we really want people to, pay attention today because you'll be affected somehow. If it's not you, it's going to be somebody that you know.
Yeah, it's like I said, the awareness I feel is getting better and better, and we need it out there. We need to learn about this, understand it. I guess talk about the different types of dementia.
Yep. So Alzheimer's itself then is the primary. And then the other types are vascular. I'm going to look at this. So that's the blood supply to the brain is impaired, typically by a stroke. And then the Lewy body is abnormal buildup of proteins. And then it can present like Parkinson's, but it's actually different. And then frontotemporal, also known as Pick's disease, and that can affect the younger people, which means younger than 65. And it's characterized by the degeneration of neurons in the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain.
Complicated stuff there, but
Yeah.
but it again bringing that it's not just a one one type of disease here. It's a
Right.
disease in different fashions,
Yeah.
different age groups. So again, crazy important information to get out there. What would you say as far as what loved ones should learn about in ways of dealing with this at home?
Right. So certainly these tips are somewhat directed at the loved ones and the caregivers because a person that has dementia or any of these types of conditions, at some point they are able to do some care, and we're going to talk about tips. The tips today, many of them come from people that employed these tips when they were diagnosed. But at some point, people need more and more support. So it's really important for caregivers to just take this helpful action, and we'll describe some today.
Yeah, and step one, getting dressed seems really simple, but
Right. So there's often people complaining that someone who has dementia is wearing the same thing over and over. They're in it for multiple consecutive days. And so one person early on she could identify that the reason that was happening to her is because she didn't know where her clothes were. So photographs of what's in a drawer and what's in the closet can identify, that's where my clothes are, versus you're just looking at a bunch of doors and closets in your house and who knows what's behind them. So photographs labels while people can still have words. Those are some tips you can use.
Just sticking on the picture front, what would be some other uses that could bring that that to
So
light?
the bathroom, identifying where the toilet is, especially that's time sensitive, right? And everybody needs to get there multiple times a day. So that would be certainly a second recommendation if you're going to do a photo label. And again, if the photo label, you can also use words and letters, even just a T where the toilet is, and other things. If you want people in the kitchen and being able to find like their food, then what is in this particular cabinet, and just give a cue.
Looking at some other tips, looking at the lighting side of things.
Right, so we need lighting. A well-lit area is certainly important. That's part of the fall prevention and everything else. And I would say I was just in the house this week trying to find the light switch for the stairs that we were going to work on, and could not because the wallpaper had wallpapered the wall and the switch, and it was hard for me to find it. And I'm not affected by this, so we would suggest tape or paint or something bright and distinct around the light switch itself to make that stand out. And that's every room.
This one I picked on my grandma before about floor mats, rugs,
Right.
and things like that.
So we're always going to tell you to get the rugs up. They're just a fall hazard, and we've talked before about statistics with falls, and none of that's good. So we would just suggest all that come up. Where there is carpet that's fraying at a space, that needs to be resolved, taken up, replaced, something like that. If there are cables in the walking paths, that's certainly a trip hazard. So there's cord protectors and covers and things, as well as moving that out of the way. And then we would also just suggest brightly colored tape or paint at the edge of stairs. And that means each step, to make that distinct as to where that step ends. And I mean, I've had this on just steps I've been on where it's a very narrow, right? And you really have to be careful with placement, and the visual distinction is going to be helpful here. So we would suggest that visual contrast wherever there's an older adult living.
Absolutely, and this one too, handrails makes a difference, and especially in a dementia-friendly home.
Right, and we are always going to tell you to have handrails wherever there's steps and stairs, and certainly on both sides. And then part of these can be custom made, and you can even somewhat adapt ones that are there with some fixes. And we want them to be a little bit longer than the steps themselves. We see a lot of houses, and handrails are all types, and so sometimes they're a little too short, and you're having to lean, and that's creating some risk. So we really want the handrails to be a little bit longer than the steps themselves, so that there's a place for a person to stand and hold that and stabilize on a flat surface while they're waiting for their caregiver or making that transition to the next space.
Any other tips here before we take off?
Well, I just want to suggest one from Wendy Mitchell. She is an ambassador. I found a video online. She's a person in Britain with dementia, and she had a book called Somebody I Used to Know. And she just talked about moving into a new home and not knowing what was on the other side of doors and finding herself kind of stuck and agitated in one room. And then she just sort of realized that she could remove the doors and see what was in the connecting rooms, and that reduced her agitation and lessened confusion. And that's something we always want to be trying to do for people around us that have dementia.
Real quick, Danielle, can you just kind of wrap up on the that independent living does have home modification,
Right.
and there are grants and insurance to help
Right.
get these modifications
So
taken care
just
of.
think broadly about how you could pay for things. We certainly have the Dane County grant for some minor home repair and some modifications for homeowners in Dane County. So you can call us 268-9635 to learn more about that. But just think broadly about long-term care policies, your health insurance, health insurance, things like that, and just figure out where you could tap some resources. These are very low. We usually do things that are in the hundreds of dollars, not the tens of thousands. So home modification is definitely the low-cost option.
Fantastic. All right, if you got any questions, check out the website, independentliving.org, and you can also talk to Danielle as well. All right, we need to take a quick break. You are watching Talking Fitchburg.